If you could buy a crystal ball that will show you exactly what your life is going to look like over the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years, would you buy it? Or if one was available for free, would you use it? Think about that for a second. Do we want to know? We all think we are on this unique path, unique to only us, and no one has ever gone down this path. Is that egotistical? I think it is, because most of us are going down the exact path that our parents went through, our grandparents. Most of us, even though, yes, technology is changing, life is changing, lots of things are changing, but the path isn't. Either we go down the employee route where we become a slave to, or we decide to make other people rich first, or we become entrepreneurs. These paths have existed for hundreds of years. We think we are, forging a new path. No, we're not. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. The reason why I say that is I just had a couple of conversations yesterday and today with a couple of young entrepreneurs who are making some, pretty drastic mistakes. But the thing is, you can't really reach them because they trust their gut or their intuition or their sense or whatever it is. And yet they haven't lived long enough to know what they truly want. Because how do you know what you're going to want when you're 60 years old, right? And how dare you ask a 16-year-old what they want to do with the rest of their lives? You need to choose a path. You need to choose a career. You need to choose a job. What are you going to be? Are you going to be a doctor, lawyer? Are you going to start a business? Or are you going to be, or are you going to into the corporate world? What are you going to do? Behind me is what we call the learning curve. And this is a business learning curve. This is, a personal learning curve for your life. It's a learning curve, right? And why do we always insist on making our own mistakes? And most people say, Leo, you can only learn by making mistakes. Yeah, bullshit. Yeah, bullshit. When I was 11 and a half and 12 years old, I knew I was on the wrong path. I knew I was on the wrong path because, even though my dad was saying, invest in real estate, save all your money and all that made sense to me at that point. Now I know it shouldn't have made sense, but it made sense to me at that point. But what he also said was, Leo, work hard, nose to the grindstone, and just keep your head down, work hard, and eventually success will find you. And I thought, what's wrong with that statement, right? Because even though I didn't know what was wrong with that statement, but it just didn't feel right. So that's when I decided to start asking questions. There's got to be a difference between working hard and working smart, right? Working hard is this curve behind me. It actually starts here. This is A side and B on this side. And what's the shortest distance between 2 points? Is it a curve or is it a straight line straight across? All right. And most people choose a curve. Why do we choose a curve? Why do we choose to go to university? Why do we choose to get a job first? Why do we choose to work with our hands first in the industry that we chose? Why do we choose all these stupid, stupid, stupid things before we decide to get an advisor? If I was, well, I'm not going to say I was smart enough. I mean, instinctively, I went out looking for advisors because I was not getting the right advice when I was 12. And that's when I went to work in a tailor shop so I could meet successful business owners because I wanted to bleed their brains dry, right? Why don't we do that anymore? Why the young generation doesn't even want to drive, doesn't even want to do the things that I desperately wanted to do at 12 and 13 years old because I wanted to drive. I wanted independence. I wanted a car. And I had some real fears that kept me awake at night. And that was the fear of being average. And I think that's what drove me to find, entrepreneurs and successful business owners so I can bleed their information so I could figure out the quickest way to get there. And I knew I was on the learning curve, but I didn't want to be on the learning curve, right? So going back to the conversation I had with two young entrepreneurs this morning is I advised them, to start with, a business blueprint, branding, differentiation, and everything else, all the 33 tools. And, I know I come across as Mr. Know-it-all on all my videos because I sound like I know everything. Keep in mind, I keep emphasizing for the past 40 years, we've been analyzing and comparing companies, company A to company B, and what does this company do better than the other? And I take no credit for the 33 tools. These are tools that we learned from analyzing companies over the past 40 years, right? But people always want to use their gut feel. And how do we know the gut feel is right? When I can prove to you the gut feel is wrong 96% of the time, because 96% of companies fail. Why? Because they use their gut feel. If that's not enough for you, and I keep talking about, how can you avoid a $400,000 mistake, and what's the value of ignoring or avoiding a $400,000 mistake, right? Watch those videos. Right. So again, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. It's A to B. But you can only go from A to B if you're learning from other people's successes and failures. You're only going from A to B in a straight line if you're learning from other people. If you have an advisor who's been up and down your road, there's many alligators going up and down your road. There's many potholes. Right. If you insist on being on the learning curve, in most companies, if you look at some of the Facebook groups, they're on a 40-year learning curve. What does that mean? Well, it's taken them 40 years to learn something they could have learned in 2 or 3 months. Do I need to repeat that? They're on the learning curve to learn something over a 40-year period. They could have learned something we already know today. We've known for the past 20 years. And that's what I mean about the crystal ball. The crystal ball is right in front of you. It's right in front of you on TikTok. It's right in front of you on Facebook groups. It's in front of you everywhere on social media. It's in front of you, right? If you want to avoid that, go to old age homes and sit down with, a business owner who's retired and say, what are your regrets? How would you advise a young person? What would you tell yourself when you were 7, 8, or 9 years old? What would you do differently? That is the crystal ball. I don't know what a better definition of a crystal ball than asking old people, what's ahead of me on this road, right? Because they've been up and down that road before. So why are we ignoring what's right in front of us? Why do we choose to drive blind? Can you imagine driving down a deserted farm road and no lights, and we turn off the lights and say, oh, let's see what happens, right? That's what we do in our business life. That's what we do in our personal life. That's what we do in general. We can't see more than, a week or two in front of us. How can you design a career, a business, or a life not seeing more than a couple of days in front of you? That, to me, that is ridiculous. We need a life blueprint. We want to know exactly what the next 40 years of our lives looks like. If you don't know that, or if that's too scary for you, get over yourself. You also need to know the same thing. What's the next 10, 20, 40 years of my business going to look like? What's my quality of life going to look like, right? Why do we choose to operate blind? Or why do we choose not to use technology that's readily available? Why don't we, adapt systems and procedures in the business blueprint and everything else that will, guarantee a 98, 99% success rate as opposed to a 96% failure rate? I would love to hear your questions, comments below. I would really like to hear it. If you're ready to have a real, authentic, fearless conversation, I'm always here. We are always here. We always have these conversations on 10X Networking Live every day at 12 noon Eastern Time, live on TikTok. So do you want to know what's ahead of you for your business career, personal career, or even your job career? it's readily available. All you have to do is ask. Again, would love to hear your questions, comments below. We'll talk again soon. Take care.